Everyone. Hello, everyone. My name is Amy Gantman, and I'm the Executive Director of the Brentwood Arts Center. And I thank you and welcome you to our virtual auditorium for BAC's Conversations on Art series with our host, Meg Linton, and guest artist, Diener. Brentwood Arts Center's success is due to our incredible and generous board of directors, leadership council, donors, staff, faculty, and students who support the BAC through thick and through thin. We can only do all that we do because of our generous donors who believe that everyone should have access to the arts and to education. I'd like to be sure to mention that BAC's new campus in Santa Monica, located at 1625 Olympic Boulevard, is open. Our spring 2024 term is underway. The campus is very close to 18th Street Arts Center, Crossroads School, and there's a Metro rail stop right nearby. And we're excited to be offering in-person classes once again. We have been doing so for the last year. Your support is more important than ever. Now, our host, Meg Linton, and I met at Otis College of Art and Design while Meg was the director of exhibitions at the Ben Maltz Gallery, and I was the dean of continuing education. Our divisions collaborated on many public programs, and we are thrilled to bring Meg's love and respect for the artists to BAC. Meg has been visiting artist studios for well over 20 years in her various roles as director and curator of contemporary art spaces in Southern California. Currently, Meg is lead producer on a documentary film about feminist performance art in Los Angeles in the 1970s and 80s called Acting Like Women, directed by Sherry Galkey. She is working on an exhibition about the artist Keith Julius Puccinelli, and the exhibition opens in September 2024 at UC Santa Barbara. Meg is writing a novel and, of course, conversing with Diener for the BAC this afternoon. I'd like to welcome Meg Linton.
Amy, thank you. It's always great to be here and sharing a Friday lunchtime hour with you and the BAC team. We're so grateful to the anonymous donor who makes the Conversation Art series possible and available to the community for free. Thank you to the whole BAC team who works behind the scenes to bring this online program to life. We are thrilled to be hosting Diener today, who is our 28th guest artist. And we do want to let everyone know that after today's presentations, Conversations on Art will be going on a little hiatus until further notice. The BAC has undergone a monumental shift with opening their beautiful new space, and we're pressing pause to reflect on its expanding future. Before I introduce our guest, I have the usual housekeeping. We are recording today's presentation, and we ask that you please mute your microphones and turn off your video. It just helps us avoid any static or feedback. During the conversation, if you have any questions, please type them into the chat box, and I will either work them into the discussion or ask them at the end. In the chat box, you will also see that we've put some additional information about our guests for you to peruse on your own. We are honored to have artist Diener with us today. I have had the good fortune of watching Anne's work develop over the last 20 years as she's tackled subjects of disappearing landmarks, changing agricultural landscapes, and anthropological layers of time and space. Drawing is at the core of what she does and is the constant as she expands her materials to include tapestry, printmaking, and now architectural installations. So welcome, Anne.
Thank you.
So excited to have you here. I'm going to cough for a second. Excuse me. So we're just going to launch in. So we've got a source of inspiration that we're looking at. Anne, do you want to tell us what we're seeing?
Yeah, so I started a series of work because I was sort of fascinated with farmland in Ventura County. My great-grandparents were early farmers, and they owned a lot of that land and farmed it. And now, of course, it's all been covered over, not all been covered over, but much of it's been covered over with factory greenhouses or subdivisions or shopping centers. And so I'm interested in how the land has been covered over and changed with other things, but then you can see things through the land. You can see some little pieces of farming. And so I started a series of work based on drawings of the farmland with layers of modern day buildings and agriculture on top of it. This is my uncle who was farming in 1938. I found this on the internet, which is sort of interesting. And so that's sort of how the series started. And then I started drawing from old family photographs, from old, just drawings of just old drawings, old landscape photographs, things I found at the Ventura County Historical Museum. And then I started making these drawings that were a combination of sort of the old and the new. And you can see the first drawing is next. That's the first drawing I did of this series. And this sort of launched into this whole body of work that I've been working on for several years, actually for about 10, 15 years. I've veered away from it, and then I've come back to it recently for an upcoming show that I'm having this opening next week at the Lancaster Museum.
This is great. I'm sorry, I'm having a coughing fit.
So you can see in this drawing, you can see sort of the foliage, and then you can see the modern day wire and hoops and modern day greenhouses that cover over much of the land.
And so your observations of the land are kind of, you've been really involved in the farming community from like Oxnard to Carpinteria, right? And is that kind of the territory that you've explored? Anne? Anne, I think we're frozen.
Yeah, she's frozen.
Am I frozen?
Yeah. Oh, there you go. You're back.
Okay, my internet connection it says it's questionable. So hopefully this will work. Anyway, so I start by doing research. I start by looking at images. I start by reading anything I can find on the subject. And then I collect all of these images in boxes and binders. And when I start working, I just start from scratch. I don't have a pre-planned map of where the drawing is going to go. I just start drawing at one point and then start overlapping images, and then things sort of evolve as they go. This particular drawing is quite large. It's about 8 feet high, and I made this drawing for Bank Gallery, Los Angeles. It was in an old bank building, and I was having a show there, and the ceilings were really, really high, and I thought it would fit into the space. So that's kind of how I started this vertical format. This was actually shown at Otis in the show that you did, a Looky See, and this is a combination of the factory greenhouses where they grow tomatoes, and then the foliage. So it has a lot of images of the greenhouses themselves, of the wires and the architecture of the buildings. And then in these greenhouses, the tomatoes grow maybe 20, 25 feet high from these little tiny pods of earth. And so I was sort of fascinated with how they could produce these ginormous plants from just these little tiny bits of soil. Everything it's all engineered, it's all contained, and it's quite beautiful in terms of the structure and the light coming through, and the foliage and the architecture and the red everywhere of the tomatoes. This drawing was from an early series, and it's the same subject matters. This is quite a large drawing. It's about 8 by 9 feet, and it's a combination of the architecture and foliage and little bits and pieces of images I found from the family farm that I sort of that I drew in there. And you can see the top of the top left part is very, very complex with a lot of detail. And I tended to make the top, I tend to like making parts of my drawings really complex and then parts of it having it be really open. And this hoop this hoop format, this hoop design or image has sort of become a constant in my drawings for a long time. So these things that I start drawing become a vocabulary of sorts, and they come through in other drawings. If you go to the next one, I did a project at UCSB in 2010 at the museum, and the wall is 20 by 23 feet. And so I used that prior drawing as a basis for this drawn wall. And for the wall, I used all of these images. I took parts of the drawing. This is the start of the project. I took parts of the drawing and made just Xerox prints of them and used a lot and cut them all out. And so we did the big drawing on the wall. I did it with 8 students. So we did the drawing on the wall, and then after it was sort of on its way along, then we started pasting and gluing these little tiny details on top of that, so you can sort of see the progress of it going. It's really the scale shows by the lift here, and so you can see how the scale of this drawing. And I had certain students draw hoops. I had certain students paint in. I had, and then I did a lot of the details too. So it just kind of evolved as we went.
How did that work? Like working with students actually doing the drawing? Did you give them a lot of instruction, or did you just kind of let them know, I need you to just shade in this area? Or how did you work with them?
Yeah, I started with about 12 students. And it turned out to be a lot of work. We made this wall over a 1-month period.
Wow.
And so we worked pretty much round the clock. I mean, they would come in early in the morning, late at night, and then they would just come in as they could. But as it turned out, there were 8 students who were really, really involved. And also, as it turned out, some were really good at painting. Some were really, really good at drawing various hoops or doing certain things. So I put those people on a certain task, and they had a task to do. So for example, one young person did all of the hoops, and you'll probably see some videos as we go along. It was really fun too. And they brought their friends in. Pardon?
I mean, it must be to work with a team, because you're usually so isolated in the studio.
Yeah, it's actually my favorite thing to do. Is to just work with a bunch of people, and you get all these results that you don't expect too. So this was our table of people. Somebody was there cutting everything, and then we would cut it and paste it, and you can keep going. There's quite a few of these. Here's the scale of it. And it was they were going to leave it up for a very short time, but it ended up staying up for about maybe, I think, 8 months.
Oh my goodness, that's wonderful.
Everybody was really enjoying it. And you can see this, the pencil drawing above her head. There was one woman who just really loved drawing these pencil hoops, so she drew all of them.
Wow.
You would just come in, just do that section.
So then once the 8 months was up, it was just painted over?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was painted over. Sad.
That's the hard part, isn't it?
Yeah, it is the hard part. But a lot of people saw it. It was really a lot of fun.
That's great.
Okay, so then the next series of work is still sort of the same greenhouse idea, but I call it Cathedrals of Commerce because these greenhouses look like Gothic cathedrals. They're really, really tall. They have these beautiful arches at the top. And so I made this series of work sort of based on cathedrals and then also based on greenhouse structures. And this is one of them here. These are not super large. These are about 60 by 40 inches. And you can see the architecture, and you can see the hoops and the same sort of vocabulary of images. With each body of work, and actually with each drawing, I try to throw in something different. So I threw in the cathedral idea. I collected all these pictures and did all this research on cathedrals and used that as part of the subject of this. And there's a couple of these in here.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, could you break down like how you start an image like this? Because there's so many layers. Do you lay down one layer and just work like layer by layer, or do you end up kind of going back and forth and
I
working
start-
different areas and pulling different areas out?
I start with the architecture. If it's a really big drawing, I try to put the architecture in first and some sort of a structure, because the drawings are so busy.
Mhm.
And then I start layering on top of the various of the various sections of the drawing. And then I just layer on top and then move from section to section and just keep putting one thing on top of the other. And sometimes what I do is I'll throw in a challenge of just taking a small drawing and just sticking it on the drawing at some random space. And then that makes me change the composition and do something with it. So I'm always trying to kind of throw something in there that's a little bit different, that makes me have some sort of visual challenge.
So, do you ever like remove things? Do you have?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
It's
So it
hard.
is an additive and subtractive process.
It's mostly additive, and it's mostly I take what's there and use it as a source for the next thing. So I'll use what's there to kind of trigger the next move that I'm going to make. But sometimes they get too busy, and they're just they just get out of control. And so I'll either paint over all of it, or I'll just cut it up and take a section I like and use that section as a source of a new drawing. Sometimes I just can't save them.
Yeah.
So I
And
just,
I know we're looking at this, go back a sec. We're looking at this flat on the screen, so it's hard to tell, but what's all the media you have? There's graphite, there's collaged elements. So what's all the media that's in this drawing that we're looking at?
it's graphite and it's gouache and sometimes ink, but that's pretty much it on these drawings.
So there's no collaged elements or anything?
Not on this
On
one.
this one. Okay.
Sometimes there are, but I don't think there's any on these, as I recall. These are just paint and so
The
the
depth is amazing.
thanks. The next one is kind of a family history too. This is the St. Francis Dam, and I did a series of drawing based on the St. Francis Dam break of 1928. And the reason I did it was that my family talked about it all the time, because they actually saw the results of the dam break. So it's the dam is located by Santa Clarita, and it was built by Mulholland, who engineered much of the water system for Los Angeles. And he was told that the dam was leaking, and he disregarded the warnings, and the dam broke, and this wall of water cascaded down from some Santa Clarita through Ventura County. Of course, it broke, and then it flooded much of Ventura County. There was a 100-foot or 500-foot wall of water that came through. And so my family went to the Conejo Grade and watched the water go through.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of LA history, and it's the movie Chinatown is based on this as well. And so I made a series of drawings based on the St. Francis Dam break. I found a bunch of pictures of the dam itself and the breaking of the dam. And of course, there's a lot of houses that were pushed over and cars that were pushed over. And it was the second worst disaster in California's history after the earthquake in San Francisco. This is quite a large drawing. It's about 10 feet high and about 52 inches wide. There's two pieces. And it's just based on all the images I found of the dam break. So it's houses, it's people, it's cars, it's books, it's foliage, trees. Everything was just pushed over and destroyed.
How big is this drawing?
This drawing is 10 feet high, and then each panel is 10 feet high, and there's two panels. So, and they're 52 inches wide. It's on paper. And and this is also based on the same series. And if you look at the top part of this drawing, it sort of looks like the Tower of Babel. Well, the St. Francis Dam looks like the Tower of Babel. It's still there. Parts of it are still there. Mm-hmm. And so I sort of based it on the hubris of the engineer who built this dam without being very careful. So it has images of the same thing, it's the dam structure itself, and then all of the things that sort of were displaced by the dam.
Yeah. The hubris of trying to control nature,
Right, yeah,
because water is a powerful force.
right. And then this is another a series that came after that. And it's sort of the same thing, but I use more patterning. I was working in Los Angeles. I'm pretty fascinated with Los Angeles and the various cultures around. So there's Moorish architecture, there's Chinese, there's Japanese. So I made these drawings based on what I was seeing from my studio. So you can see the patterning on the left-hand side. And I based that on some of the patterns that I just saw around the city, and made this drawing. It's again, it's foliage and architecture and patterning. And this one has more patterning. It's not based on farming. It's based on what I was seeing from Los Angeles.
And
then,
your studio is in Chinatown, right?
yeah, so you can kind of look out and see all kinds of different things. And then as you walk around, of course, you see all kinds of different cultures and architecture and fabrics, and it's really fascinating. Everything kind of melts together.
Yeah. And there's such an energy to your work with the swirls and it's just, they constantly move.
Yeah, this project here was at Santa Barbara City College, the Atkinson Gallery. And this was another project with students. So this wall was 23 feet across, and then
Oh, we lost you for a second. Check your internet.
am I back?
You're back.
Oh dear. Okay.
That's
Sorry,
okay.
I don't know what's going on. So I based this particular project on that last drawing that I showed you.
Mhm.
And so what we did on this one was I made 100 small drawings on paper, and they were each 12 by 12. I think they were each 10 by 10 inches. And then I had those printed onto a vinyl sheet, and I had them enlarged to be, I think they were 14 inches square. So the squares you see there are from those 100 small drawings that I did.
Wow.
And it was printed on vinyl. And then I started the project by just putting the vinyl all the way across the wall. And so that's the squares that you see there. And then on top of the vinyl, I started drawing and painting. So you can see the patterns that go up and down, and those were painted. And then you can see all of the hoops and the sort of the structure that I placed on top of the squares. And then Santa Barbara City College has a really great printmaking department. This is a small portion of a detail of a thing, of a piece. And so they made a bunch of silkscreen prints on Mylar and on paper. And then we cut those out and then stuck those on top of the vinyl, and then so there was the vinyl, the paint, and then the silkscreen pieces.
Wow.
And then there was a point at which it was getting too busy. So I took a razor blade and started cutting out parts of the vinyl. So there would be white spaces that were left.
Let's go back and look at it for a sec. Yeah.
So you can see how there's a big white space down the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we did was we had the vinyl on there, put the lines on there, put the patterns on there, and then I cut some pieces out. And then after we cut the pieces out, then we put on the silkscreen prints. It's kind of this adding going. And I had about 8 students on this one too. It was the same kind of thing. Maybe 12 or 15 showed up, and then about 8 really stuck with it. And it was another month project, round the clock, 8 to 5 every day, and then at night sometimes, and on weekends. But it was really quite spectacular, I thought.
So we had a question come in from Linda Ekstrom, and she said, your works are so narratively rich. Do you ever integrate text or words into your compositions?
I don't, not so far.
So, but do you provide any kind of didactic material or anything to kind of give people an entree into the subject matter?
Yeah, I do. I always have a really very pretty much detailed artist statement about where I'm going, what I'm doing with it. But I don't put text in it. And with this current show at Lancaster, I wrote quite a long article about, how I got to this place and what I was doing with this work, and tried to explain it.
That's great.
You can see a detail of the wall. Okay, now we're going to switch gears completely. So this is Genoa, Italy. And I had a residency at the Bogliasco Foundation, which is outside of Genova. And so I wanted to do a project based on the city and based on what I was seeing around me. So this is the ancient port city of Genova. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see it's a very beautiful city with this medieval architecture. So I made this series of work when I was there for 5 weeks, based on layering, kind of the juxtaposing of the architecture and the old port city. So it's a combination of both. So you can see them in the sort of square designs, or the hoops there. And then there's some images of just sort of the patterning the patterning of the port city, kind of really crazy wires everywhere. There's just, it's very, very busy and very, very active and very frenetic. And then with that, there's these beautiful churches and architecture. So I made this series of drawings while I was there. I made about 4 of them there, and then I finished the rest at home based on this research that I saw there.
Wow. Did you show any of the drawings while you were there? Did you get any feedback from people?
I showed drawings there, they show things and gave a talk on it. And actually, I met a lot of really interesting people, because they have people come in from the University of Geneva. And so I got to meet people there who talked about the history of the city and sort of kind of helped put all this together for me. And they talked to, and they had receptions, and it was really pretty fascinating. And it culminated with the book. So when I got back, I wrote a little article about the city and about the project, and I wrote it in English and Italian, and then the book has the article plus the images that I made during that time.
That's lovely.
They have a library, and they ask you to leave something there. So they have authors there and artists, of course. And so I made this book, and it's in their library.
And did you wrote the Italian as well?
I did.
That's awesome. I just remember when you were starting to study Italian.
Yeah, I've been studying that for about 5 years, so I can read and write pretty fluently.
That's fantastic.
It's a little harder, but I'm working on it.
That's really amazing.
So then when I was in my, this is a lithograph that I made, a series of these. In my studio in Chinatown, Richard Nielsen, who had this beautiful printing press and beautiful print studio there, asked me to make prints. So I made these lithographs on stone, which was really pretty exciting. Mm-hmm. These are about 18 by 24 inches, and I made a whole series of these, and this is one of them.
Had you done printmaking before?
I have, but it's been a while. I did a lot of printmaking in college, but it's been a million years. And so I love making prints. I made some there and also at El Nopal Press in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. So this is another series of work that I did after that. And these are based on some of the textiles at the Fowler Museum at UCLA. There's all these amazing textiles there. So I did a body of research there, and then I collected all of these sort of pattern details and made these series of drawings based on those.
Were you looking at textiles from all over the world?
All over the world, yeah, all over the world. And they have so much, they have so many resources there. And so, and then this one is a part of LACMA's collection now.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
And is this still based on the textiles?
It's still based on the textiles. I did a whole bunch of these based on the textiles. And they're gouache and pencil, pretty much. Gouache and graphite. This one's about 60 by 40 inches. It's not super huge.
So have you always drawn ever since you were a little kid?
I have, yeah. Yeah, I've always drawn. And I pretty much draw every day. This is part of that textile project too. I want to do something completely different. So actually this piece of paper is from Keith, is from Keith. Puccinelli.
That's
Yeah.
great.
And I thought, I'm going to do something with this piece of paper. And
Oh,
so
that's fantastic.
it's 12 feet long, 12 feet wide, and it's 36 inches high. And I just thought I'm going to make something out of it. So I did. And this is, I just sort of put it on the studio wall and started drawing from these textiles. And it was kind of fun. It was really, really different and really a different format and kind of a challenge. It didn't come together until I put the pink down the middle.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was the top was fine, the bottom was fine, and then it's just sort of wasn't working. So I
Mhm.
started adding these pink balls across the middle, and it kind of pulled it all together. It was fun.
It seems so integrated. I wouldn't have picked that was the thing that did it.
Yeah, yeah, it just didn't work at all, and I had to make this one work. I didn't want to toss it. I had to make the right. So much time on it.
So do you work on one drawing at a time, or do you have multiple going? Because it seems like you just,
Yeah, it's mostly one at a time.
wow.
But if I get stuck, I leave it alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's mostly one at a time. Sometimes a little bit more, but yeah, that's kind of what it is. And this one is from the same sort of series of patterns. And
Yeah.
actually what you're looking at behind me is a tapestry that was made from this drawing.
Oh, that's right. You started making tapestries.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So this project is completely different. It's really a one-off. There was an article in the New York Times, and Liza Liu was doing this project during COVID. And she wanted people to make a comfort blanket, her words, I think it was more like a quilt, and to take everything in your house and whatever you had and just make something out of it. So during the City College project, we made all these silk screens. And so while I was there, I had these two big pieces of canvas. So I just had them silk screen borders on these pieces of canvas. So that was a piece of canvas that I had. And then I have all these scarves from my family, and I have table napkins, and I have dish towels and thread and buttons and whatever. So I started making this piece during COVID. Anyway, it was really fun. And I sewed the whole thing. It's all sewn, which is completely different. But it was really kind of fun to do and really kind of opened up my process a little bit. And I think I'll do more sewing. There's a project in the show you'll see at Lancaster that's all beaded. So I started with a piece of canvas on that one, and I started painting it. And then I started beading it. I was going to put a few beads on it, but I got carried away and the whole thing is beaded. So it's a 10-foot piece. It's completely beaded. Anyway, here's
You
some
getting carried away? How unusual.
I know. Anyway, and here's some details of that Liza Liu project that I did.
Wow.
Anyway, it was a lot of fun. And then I met this lady at the swimming pool. I swim every day. And she had all these antique buttons. So she gave me all these antique buttons, and it was kind of fun just to have all this fun stuff to work with. Okay, now we're going to switch again. So this is some of the reading for the show that's going up next week. And what I wanted to do was a project on, it was art and science. So I wanted to do something on industrial farming, factory farming. And so I read all kinds of books about water and soil and how food is grown and how land has changed, and started kind of making my ideas. So I decided to make 4 big drawings for the show, one on soil, one on water, one on factory farming, and one on food. But as I did this research, the big issue is water. And you'll see that book, that big yellow one in the middle, is called The Drenched Land by Mark Arox. And it's the most fascinating book. I could not stop reading this book. I read it 3 times. Anyway, so it's based on the San Joaquin Valley, and it's based on the water wars of the San Joaquin Valley. There's intrigue there. There are people who have had water rights since the 1700s, and they have plenty of water. There are other people who are trying to grow almonds on land that should not have almonds grown on it. And so they're using too much water, they're depleting the aquifers, there's land subsidence, there's water stealing. This is the book. Anyway, so I decided to base my project for Lancaster on the San Joaquin Valley. And in doing the research, I found a bunch of maps of waterways. And so I included maps in the show. Here's my little inspiration wall, I call it. And I wanted to make a walk-in space too. And so you'll see on the right, you'll see the structure, which I designed, and then it was made on a 3D printer. And part of the structure will have copper almond trees and leaves. Anyway, so I ended up making this walk-in structure with the help of Robin Donaldson Architects, who made it on a 3D printer. And you can walk into it, and if you look at the top drawing, you can see a person in there. And then, anyway, so it's kind of based on a cathedral shape, and it's 10 by 12 inches, 10 by 12 feet, and then it's 14 feet high. So a person can actually walk in there. And if you go to the next slide, the next image, I made a bunch of copper almond trees. And those are hanging from the apex of the structure. And that's in the show.
It seems like that COVID blanket, comfort blanket or quilts kind of helped break you into also starting to work in all kinds of material.
It really did. It really did. And it was really
Oh, you're coming in and out, Anne. Oh, you were back for a second. We lost you.
What's going on?
Okay, we can hear you again. Okay.
So I made hundreds and hundreds of leaves on a Cricut machine. You know what that's a craft machine. And so these are some of the leaves, and these are all hanging. They'll be hanging from the inside of the structure. Oh, here's just a studio picture. So you can see on the left, you can see that Liza Liu project on the left. And then you can see in the foreground, and that's one of the canvas pieces that I have that has silk screen on the side. And then on the right, I'm working on drawings for the Lancaster show. Here's a mock-up of the structure that I was going to build. And as it turns out, I was going to wrap it, but it ended up looking like a tent at Curry Village, so I didn't wrap it. It looked sort of not like, it looked like a camping tent. So what I decided to do was just keep it open, because the actual structure that they built has beautiful beams, and I made each of the cross beams different from each other. This is the structure here. So you can see it's really sort of nice without any kind of wrapping at all. So I decided to leave it open, and you can see the scale of it. And then people will just walk in, but there'll be all these things on the ceiling that they'll sort of look up at.
It looks like, is it all slatted? So does it all just pop apart?
It does. It all comes apart. Yeah, it comes apart like a toy.
Nice.
It's really nice.
Kind of like Lincoln logs or something.
Yeah. And then the front pieces have my drawings incised on. You can kind of see there. So I had them incise details from the drawings on the front pieces.
So when you say incised, what's the actual process? Is it like cut in, or is it burned in, or?
It's cut in.
Okay.
And here's just some details of it. It's very sturdy, and I like it because it has a lot of little parts to it. It's not just, it's not just a box, but it has these beams that go across the top, and then it's not really straight either. Those horizontal walls, or where the vertical meets the ceiling, those curve in. So they're not just straight. So there's all these little kind of nuances. That's part of it.
Yeah. How does it feel from having gone from seeing it outside for so long to going inside?
It's nice. It really works there because the space is so enormous there. the ceilings are 24 feet high.
Oh, wow.
So I really tried to make stuff. I tried to make work that would really take over that space, and I think it worked. The
Mhm.
walls were painted a really dark brown, which I wasn't too sure about at first, but they really work. They really kind of make the work pop out.
That's great. And then when does the show open?
Next Saturday, a week from tomorrow, May
That's
11th.
exciting. And you're all installed? You don't have anything more to do?
My part's all done. They're just doing now the text on the walls and things like that.
Right.
But all the work is out. This is one of the drawings from the show, and this is the water drawing.
And what's the scale on this?
This is 10 feet high by 52 inches wide,
Mhm.
and it's graphite and gouache. It has a lot of collage elements on it. It has a lot of little drawings on Yupo that are stuck on there. It's on paper. And this is also one that's in the show. This is the first drawing that I did. I wasn't quite sure where I was going to go with this show. So I made this diptych. And this is also a water diptych, just images of water that I had found in various books and various source materials.
Mhm. But there's images of water, but also plant life, right?
Yeah, plant life. And then there's also the water images have a lot of patterning to them. I also took images and some of the other ones of soil subsidence. It's sort of interesting because of all the draining of the aquifers, there's holes in the ground that are hundreds of feet deep. I mean, huge portions of soil and land have just fallen.
And
Layers of things.
so I'm sorry, explain what this image
Okay.
is again. You froze.
This one here?
Yeah.
Okay. So these are maps. So as part of the research, I went to the UC Berkeley Library of Maps, and I found other maps in various books. And it shows just images of water flow. It shows images of the San Joaquin River, the Sacramento River. And then it also shows, I have maps that show where there's a lot of land subsidence, where the aquifers are, where the aquifers are drained. So there's a whole wall in the show of just these maps to just let people know what the subject is, what the work's about, and what the issues are with this subject.
Wow.
And then I made a series of these I made 10 of these little maps. These are just 8.5 inches by 11 inches. And they're found maps. And then on top of them, I would do, so with some of them, I have water sources, and they're done with beads. This one's a food map. So I use this sort of, it's a clear, I think this was just a clear Japanese paper that I drew on and then collaged over that. And then in that little section in that yellow is a food map. It shows where certain crops are grown. And then to highlight the various foods, I use beads.
Oh, I see.
These are really fun to make too.
They look like they are.
Yeah,
And just the layering is your thing. So just building up climate information.
Yeah, it was really interesting to see these maps too. And it shows, and then this is the drawing of factory farming. They're all the drawings are big. They're all the same size. They're 10 feet high by 52 inches wide. And this is the one on factory farming. So these are images found in factories, where they process foods. So big machinery and big structures, big sort of iron looking things, which I kind of found fascinating.
And this is food production. It's not like a dairy.
Right. It's food production. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So they have pulleys and food goes down these big belts, and then they have these big structures where they, do things to food.
Right. So it's all the harvested food.
Yeah, they shake this, wash them and whatever. So anyways, this pretty interesting stuff, pretty beautiful, just manufactured structures.
Yep. Oops, wrong way.
And then this is installing the show. So the one on the left, we're installing here.
Mhm.
And you can see the color of the walls, which really, I was really happy with the way it makes the drawings pop. It really makes the things stand out. And then on the right, we're laying things on the floor. So that first thing there is a tapestry on the blue mat. And that was just last week.
And how do you, how and where do you get the tapestries done? Is it?
They're done in Belgium, and
Mhm,
they're done on a computer. And
mhm,
so you send them your digital image, and then you choose a series of colors, like a color sort of palette. And
mhm.
then they'll send you a sample. So behind me is the sample they send. And then you decide if you want those colors, if that works for you. And if it does, then they go ahead and fabricate it and send it back to you. It's
That's
quite
amazing.
beautiful. And
And
so
have you gone there to see the workshop?
I haven't been there.
Oh,
I'm going to do that. That would be really fun to go there and
fantastic.
to actually work there and kind of fool with stuff.
How do your drawings get hung?
Oh, they're hung with paper tabs. So I
Okay.
make linen tabs. So you can see on the left, you can kind of see these little tabs at the top. You won't see them at all during the show. They're the same color as the wall, but they're just paper tabs with little tiny nails,
Oh, that's great.
and they hold it, surprisingly. Sometimes we use magnets, and here's the museum, and here's the structure in the museum. So we're just setting it up.
And this is the book. Oh, we lost you again, Anne.
Yeah.
Oh, you came back for a sec. Are you there? You're not back
Am I
yet.
back?
Oh, I can
Oh
hear you.
dear.
Yeah.
Okay, so am I back? I hope.
Yeah, we got your
Okay,
voice.
so this is the structure, and then here's the books. They fortunately they came just in time for the show, and it's a really beautiful book. I think it's 40 pages, and there's an introduction by Andy Campagnoni, who's a curator, and then there's an article by Leslie Jones who talks about all the drawings and the work in the show. And then the author of The Dreamt Land, Mark Arox, wrote a piece as well. And then I wrote a piece.
Oh, that's exciting.
And the cover is the image that I beaded. So it's a really colorful piece. It's about food. And that piece is also 10 feet high, and that's on canvas. And
Hmm.
this is just a detail of that, but that piece is completely beaded.
That's incredible. And so the show opens a week from
Tomorrow.
Sunday.
Yeah, no, Saturday. It
Yeah,
opens
a week
Saturday.
from Saturday. And then and it'll be up for 4 months, right? And
Correct.
it's kind of a precursor to the Getty projects that are going to be happening later in fall.
Right,
So,
and there's going to be a program with the Getty people, I think on August 3rd. I think it's been finalized. And I'm hoping Mark Arox will come and talk.
oh, that'll be great.
And then there's going to be some curators and some other people too, talking about water and me.
That's wonderful.
So pretty-
Does anybody have any questions? Because we're at the end of the presentation, and just any last questions for Anne? We'll give you a second. As I said, the conversations are going to be going on hiatus for a little bit while we kind of pause and reflect on all of the exciting expansions that have happened with the Brentwood Art Center. And I appreciate all of you being here today. And Anne, thank you so much. I can't wait to see your show.
Thank
And
you.
I think that's it. Everybody have a fabulous weekend. And thanks
Thank
for
you so
being here.
much. Okay,
Thanks,
bye.
Anne. Bye.
Bye.